Today we're going to start by going over the homework. I'm not going to actually film you guys going over the homework, but step one, today we're going to go over questions 1 through 6 in our homework packet from last night, analyzing aggregate supply and aggregate demand changes in the short run. So what I need is some volunteers. Okay, so number one was Calvin and other children convinced their parents to purchase more big ticket items for the holidays. So big ticket item, and they're asking their parents. Their parents are consumers, right? Parents are consumers. So that's an increase in consumer spending. Aggregate demand went to the right. Price level went up, and quantity output GDP, or GDP, grew in the short run. This is awesome. Who was on this one? There you go. Make sure we got the QY at full employment output. And all of these examples, we just started at full employment. Sometimes we're going to run into a question where we'll say, create a short run equilibrium below full employment output, in which case we'd be setting up something where we'd be to the left as our initial start point. That means we're starting in a recession. Or if, for example, they wanted us to start out in an inflationary gap, we would be off to the right. So for this, since it was day one, we're always starting in a short run and long run equilibrium, or short run equilibrium at our full potential output. Yes, it should. Thank you for seeing that. Sorry. Boom, like a boss. Thank you, sir. All right. So number two, we had the effect on production when a 5% excise tax is placed on several resources. So the key there was resources. We started out at our output Y, our full employment output. And then since resource prices increased, aggregate supply shifted to the left. This is a stagflation, so price level went up and GDP went down in the short run. Nice. Who was on this one? Very good. Awesome. Number three was a large purchase of U.S. wheat by Russia. So our shifter there was net exports. That increased our aggregate demand in the short run. Price level went up. And then we went from, and that was my bad on that one, QY to Q1. So our GDP grew in the short run. Perfect. Who was on that one? Nice work, homie. Number four, we had a cut in federal spending for healthcare. So that's a decrease in G, government spending. Aggregate demand shifted to the left. Price level dropped from PLE to PL1, and quantity. Whoa. All right. I messed that problem up, I think, because I added the long run in there. So I added the long run in the wrong spot. Sorry about that. Zip. QY, Q1. So that's a decrease in output. Our GDP dropped and price level dropped. This one, make sure we have our price level written here and real GDP down there. They give you points for correctly labeling the axes. Who was on that one? Nice work. Number five, the complete disintegration of OPEC and oil prices fall. Cameo. 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 You have to wave. Number 5, we had the complete disintegration of OPEC causing oil prices to fall. So oil prices fell. That's a resource. So aggregate supply will shift to the right. Price level dropped. Quantity increase. That's perfect. Who was on that one? Nice work. And our last one was a 10% decrease in personal income tax. Cool. If we get a 10% decrease in our tax, then we have more disposable income. Who's going to be affected? Consumers, aggregate demand. Aggregate demand increased over here. Our quantity went up. Our price level went up. Now it's awesome. Everyone get this? Yes, sir. This one, yeah, this one was no. Since this one's income tax, it relates to consumer. If it was corporate tax, then it'd be actions by government. Why don't we do number 1? And how about number 4? Let's turn these two into long runs. Sound good? So analyze the change that occurred as a result of the consumer spending and tell us what happened in the long run. And then let's analyze what happened as a result of the cut in healthcare in number 4. And let's turn these bad boys into long run. So tackle that bad boy, and we'll come back in 2 seconds. Okay, so the way I like to look at it for going to our long run, we know our long run, in our long run, wages and resource prices are fully responsive to price level changes. It's always going to be one shift that happens. So you make your first shift. In this case, aggregate demand shifted to the right. Step two, we analyze the effect on the price level. For this one, the price level went up, which means we are having what? Inflation. And then we shift aggregate supply to respond to our change in price level. So if there's inflation, what do we do? Well, step one, you go ask your boss for a raise, right? Yo, Copo, give me a raise. If we ask for a raise, there's an increase in resource prices. So what happens to aggregate supply? Decrease. So which way do I shift aggregate supply? Left. Zinc. Aggregate supply shifts to the left. Our price level in the long run has gone up, but we return to our potential output. We always return home. Go home. Go back to your home. Home. Opposite in this case, here we had government cut cut healthcare. So government spending decreased, aggregate demand dropped. So we had a price level decrease, GDP went down. What happened to our price level? Well, in the long run, wages and resource prices are going to be fully responsive to a price level change. So resources are now going to be cheaper. So aggregate supply goes to the right. So in this case, our aggregate supply shifts to the right, and we've returned back to our long run PL2, and we've gone back to our potential output. We always come back. This is where it wants to live. From time to time, it goes over here, then it goes over there, and it goes over here, it goes over there, and we always return back. What does this look like I made? Business cycle, right? So we're always going to return back. This making sense to you guys? Cool. All right. So let's get the lecture going. I'll pause that. Okay. All right. So today we're going to talk about the Phillips curve. You're like, oh boy, a new curve? Oh, Mr. Owen, I was waiting for a new curve. Yes, but it's exactly the same as our aggregate supply, aggregate demand curve. The problem is it's a little bit different. Now, this one I've always kind of struggled with was saying or justifying why we have it, because you can see a lot of this information in our aggregate supply, aggregate demand model. But it's important for us to learn, and it's very heavy on our AP exam. So we're going to check it out and see how it relates to aggregate supply. I'll go to the other side. Aggregate supply, aggregate demand. What does the Phillips curve do? It shows the trade-off between inflation and unemployment. It shows the trade-off between inflation and unemployment. So, in general, there's an inverse relationship between unemployment and inflation. Inverse relationship between unemployment and inflation. If unemployment is really high, people don't have jobs, they're not spending a lot of money, the demand for all those goods and services isn't heavy. No one's fighting for goods. But if unemployment's really low, everyone's got a job, everyone's making lots of money, and there's a limited amount of resources. People all want those same things. They're going to start outbidding each other. They start pulling up or demand pulling on our resources. So there's an inverse relationship between the two. These are some dates between 1994 and 2009. The blue is our unemployment rate, and the red is our inflation. So we're trying to see that there's an inverse relationship between the two. How are we going to show it on a graph? Well, we'll put inflation on the y-axis and unemployment on the x-axis. I know, right? It's an inverse relationship, so you know what it's going to look like. It's going to look like that. What's our natural rate of unemployment? 4 to 6%. Thank you, sir. So if, for example, we have very low unemployment, like 2%, more people are working than our natural rate, well, inflation is going to be higher, about 5%. Lots of people are competing for the same goods. They're demanding a lot of stuff. They're pulling up the prices. So when unemployment is low, inflation is high, and the exact opposite occurs in the reverse. When there's a recession, you have very high unemployment. 9 is much higher than 4 to 6%, so our inflation rate is low. When there's a recession, unemployment is high and inflation is low.
Are those like base numbers, like when the unemployment is high, the inflation's low?
They're just estimates. Yeah, I'm just trying to prove a point. But what we want to shoot for usually is a 2%. 2%. So with our natural rate of unemployment between 4 to 6, that's our natural rate. What a good economy holds is usually around 2% inflation rate per year. That's our healthy inflation rate. Now you're thinking, wait a minute, Mr. Owen, inflation is exactly the same as price level, right? We were looking at price level changes in our ASAD model, and now we're looking at inflation. Aren't they synonymous? Yes. And then we were able to tell on our ASAD model, if you had an increase in output, usually there was something like an increase in employment. So if we went from QY to Q1, we assume there's an increase in employment. But now we're looking at unemployment. It seems like you can see the same stuff on the same two graphs. Yep, except for they flipped them. Instead of having GDP down here and assuming that more GDP means more employment, now we're measuring it in unemployment. So the two are going to go in opposite directions. So for me, I like to put the two graphs right next to each other. Oh, shoot, I forgot about that part. We're going to get right back to that example in 1 second. If there is a short run Phillips curve, guess what we have to have for fun? A long run Phillips curve. Where will that long run Phillips curve live? In his happy place at the natural rate of unemployment. So our natural rate of unemployment between 4 and 6% for the sake of, having a line that's not too thick and awkward looking. We'll just put 5. So our long run Phillips curve is going to occur at our natural rate of unemployment. Sometimes our economy is doing really well. We're in an inflationary period. Everybody's got a job. We're happy. And then sometimes it's over here, and sometimes it's over there, and sometimes over here. Oh, maybe it hangs out a little bit longer. Oh my gosh, now we're over here. Wait a minute. What's happening here? What does that look like to you? It's a business cycle again, except for that one hiccup right there. What happened there? That's a sad day. I don't know. We went back in time. I don't know how that happened. But sometimes we'll be over here. Sometimes we'll be over here. Sometimes we'll be over here. We're always going to return back to our long run aggregate supply, long run Phillips curve. which is the same as our long run aggregate supply, which is the same as our PPC business cycle, or the same as our PPC curve, or the same as Brian trying to stay awake. Oh, got you. All right, so the long run Phillips curve is vertical at our natural rate of unemployment, right there, at 5%. Now I can get to where I wanted to go on that last one when I said I like to put my aggregate supply right next to my my Phillips curve to see them together. Yes, sir. Heck yes, I can. Want me to draw the diagram again? I can. Can I do it? All by myself. Okay. So if you put them right next to each other, they're super easy to work with. This is our ASAD model. We've been talking about this one. We've been working on this one. We did the homework on this one. Then we converted it to long run. We are super good with ASAD model. Here, we put the Phillips curve right next to the long run, short run aggregate supply, and we can just work them together. There's no need to hurt our brains on it. So what happens on both graphs if aggregate demand increases? Aggregate demand increases, so which way do I shift? To the right, a bit. If I shift to the right over here, now where do I put it over there? I don't know. We're all pondering. There's a certified tool of economics to use to find the location. You guys ready for this? I've thought long and hard. Okay, I've reached deep into my repertoire of tricks for this one. Use your finger. Okay, so you put your finger right here on your equilibrium. I put my finger right here on my equilibrium. Price level and inflation are the same, right? Here I'm seeing that price level went up, so they experienced inflation. Price level went up, so inflation went up. In this case, our GDP increased, so I'm going to make the assumption that our employment increased. If my employment increased, what happened to my unemployment? It decreased. So I go up to follow the inflation up. This one increased. So if employment increased, unemployment decreased. My new special spot, oh, so close. How do I show an inflationary gap on the long run Phillips or short run Phillips curve? Boop, right there. Oh, that's fun. This is fun. You guys into this? And I'll hold on. They can't hear you.
So wait, whenever the demand goes, whenever the demand shifts to, it does it on the other one, but oppositely, because this is in production.
Bingo. It's mirror image. That's the way I look at it. That's why we put them next to each other. In our book, these are in two completely different chapters, separated by lots and lots of pages. I don't see why these aren't right next to each other, because watch this one. Now let's do the exact opposite. This time we're going to start out in a short run recessionary gap. So I've got my long run aggregate supply here. Since I'm in a recessionary gap, I want to put it to the left of my long run aggregate supply. How do I draw that on this side? On the left? On the right. Remember, mirror images, right? Because here, employment is less because we're below our full employment output. We're producing less than we should be producing. So our employment is less. Therefore, our unemployment is higher. See that? Okay. Oh, I'll do it again. So here, this is where we are. We're in an equilibrium in a recessionary gap. Since we're producing less at this location than we should be, our potential output, we're less than our potential output, we must be having less employment. Another way to say less employment is more unemployment. So that's why on this graph, we are to the right of our long run Phillips curve. Left of our long run aggregate supply, right of our long run Phillips curve. Cameo. So we're to the left, we're to the right. What happens when aggregate demand falls? Uh-oh, we're already in a recession. Now it's getting worse. It's like the Great Depression. We've shifted over here. So what tool do I use? The finger. So I start here on my two equilibriums. What happened to my price level? Did it drop? Yes. So price level and inflation both drop. And this time my employment continued to decrease. So what happens to my unemployment? It further increases. Let's see if I'm right on. Oh, so close, so close. See what just happened there? Okay, so using what we've noticed, we've had aggregate demand shift to the right and to the left, and it has done something to the short run Phillips curve. With our neighbor, what effect does a shift in aggregate demand have on the Phillips curve? Talk amongst yourselves. That one? Hold on one second. No, I know. He's getting the notes. Okay, what do we think? What effect does a shift in aggregate demand have on the Phillips curve? Same shift or movement? Yeah, there we go, but opposite, right? So why don't we say a shift in aggregate demand will create a movement along the short run Phillips curve. A shift in aggregate demand will result in a movement along the short run Phillips curve. I'm going to say it again. A shift in aggregate demand results in a movement along the short run Phillips curve. In reverse, curve short result, demand aggregate shift. Is that close? Is that kind of close? Not close. So a shift in aggregate demand will result in a movement along the short run Phillips curve. Cool. Are we having fun? I was really hoping you'd say that because let's talk about aggregate supply. Yes. I needed that setup. Without you, I would be nothing. Good assist. Good assist. So let's correctly draw our long run Phillips curve and our short run Phillips curve in a recessionary gap this time. So draw out your long run, draw out your aggregate supply, aggregate demand model showing us an equilibrium in a recessionary gap, and then show it over here on the Phillips curve in a recessionary gap. I had the door unlocked earlier. No, the button unlocked, but not the door. So people were, yeah, I thought I had that again. All right, so if I'm going to draw an ASAD model in a recessionary gap, what side of the long run aggregate supply am I going to be on? If I'm in a recessionary gap, to the left, right? So, left, correct? Not left, right. It would look like this, right? Because now we're in a recessionary gap. This would be our QY. This would be our QE. This would be our PLE. Sound good? That's how we would draw that on that graph. That's my name. Recessionary gap, higher unemployment. Cool. We'd be showing something like this. Means full employment output. So that's where our economy wants to produce. That's what GDP should be produced in our economy with 4 to 6% unemployment. Everybody working. We're operating along our PPC curve.
Wait, is there a secondary gap between there's more unemployment?
It means that we're producing less than full employment, which comes with higher unemployment.
Secondary gap means you're producing
Less,
less unemployment.
yep, you're producing less than your full potential output. So this is where we should be operating. If we're to the left of our full potential, that means recessionary gap. Anything to the left of long run aggregate supply, which always comes with unemployment. Left of the long run aggregate supply. Okay, so recessionary gap, no, it's fine. Recessionary gap's on this side because at 4 to 6% unemployment, we're at full employment of all of our resources. Our GDP should be right here. If we're producing less than what we could, we're in a recession. And so usually that also accompanies unemployment, right? There's that one exception where it's stagflation, where the price levels are up, but we're still in an inflationary gap. Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. Y means full employment output. So full employment means what our economy can produce. Some tests or in some books will call this QY. Some will call it QF. I've actually seen a YF before, meaning full output, but Y stands for output in economics. Okay, so now that we've practiced setting that up, let's shift it. So in this example, it says what happens if aggregate supply goes up? If aggregate supply increases, which direction does aggregate supply shift? Right. Aggregate supply goes up. We're increasing our aggregate supply. We shift to the right. So, boom, we've gone down. We've returned to our long run aggregate supply over here. So, I'm seeing that price level dropped. We've gone to PL1, and then we've gone to quantity 1. So, price level dropped, quantity dropped. This means we have less employment, right? Less employment here and less inflation. We're deflating. So what tool do I use to solve this crime? The finger. So I put my finger on the spot, my price level dropped, so my inflation dropped. I'm going to, and then over here, my employment, oh, I'm sorry, I went the wrong way. That's my bad. That's totally my bad. My employment increased. So what happened? Well, hold on. My employment increased. So what happened to my unemployment? Decreased. It shifted it. Oh, so if you have a shift in your aggregate supply, it's going to shift your short run Phillips curve. Because there was nowhere for it to go. You got down here and then you moved over and he was all by himself, right? He was all lonely. So you give him a brand new short run Phillips curve. Yeah, this is getting exciting. I know. I'm excited. What you got there? Let's do it in the opposite way. We don't have to copy this one down. Let's just do it in the opposite way. Here we're starting out at equilibrium. Let me get my shenanigans off the board. What happens if aggregate supply falls? Aggregate supply is going to shift to the left. So there it goes. It shifted to the left. Price level went up. Employment went down. In this example, price level, certified tool, price level went up. Inflation went up. Employment went down. So unemployment went up, giving me a, not even on the dot that time, a new short run Phillips curve. So with a partner, what effect does a shift in the aggregate supply have on the Phillips curve? I heard it. A shift, and a shift, and then a shift, and a shift. That's tons of shift. Holy shift. So Can I say it in one big long sentence? If there's a shift in aggregate supply, it will result in a shift of our short run Phillips curve. A shift in aggregate supply will result in a shift of our short run Phillips curve. In reverse, curve, Phillips, run, short, shift, result, supply, aggregate, shift. I was so close again, so close again. Oh, now you're just taking it up a notch. Oh, should we prove it? Okay, let's have some fun with it. Why? Because I'm going to start cutting and pasting. You guys ready for this? Here we go. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Let's mirror image this puppy. First, let's find equilibrium. Pew! Then let's shift aggregate demand. Boop, pew. Let's shift it down. Boop, pew. Whoa, want me to do it faster? Whoa, whoop, 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 whoop. Whoop, let's get aggregate supply in here. Whoop, whoop. See how it's a mirror image? Are you guys into this? But you're like, Mr. Owen, there's got to be one more thing we haven't talked about yet. The long run. Let's talk about long run time. So we got to do it on this graph. It was going to happen no matter what. Don't worry. Don't get mad at him. It was going to happen. So what happens if we have an increase in net exports? Is that an aggregate demand or an aggregate supply shift? Demand. Demand's going to shift to the right. What happened over here? We moved along our short run Phillips curve to reflect what happened over here. A shift in aggregate demand results in a movement along the short run Phillips curve. So we moved over there, but we know that an increase in price level is going to affect aggregate supply in which way? Price level goes up. What do I have to do? You got to ask your boss for a raise, right? Yo, Copo, can I get that raise? So what's going to happen to my short run aggregate supply? To the left. So aggregate supply would shift to the left, and we know that a shift in aggregate supply will result in a shift in our short run Phillips curve, and we just brought it right back to its home. Go to your home, ball. Go to your home. See, it's even a white ball like Happy Gilmore. Want me to do this again? I'm going to do it again. I want to. Aggregate demand shifts, which resulted. Aggregate demand shifts. Therefore, we have a movement along our short run Phillips curve. Price level went up. If I go long run, aggregate supply's got to shift to the left, which results in a shift to the right of our short run Phillips curve. And on this point, we need to take a mental break. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm used to that. Nope, 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 nope. Okay, so what we got now is let's bring this all together. I find that having all of our graphs in one central spot kind of alleviates the confusion of all of these inflationary gaps and recessionary gaps. So on a sheet of paper, we need to divide it up into force. Cameo. Oh, Charles, you get a second one. So what we're going to do is let's fold a paper or just divide it into force. And we're going to draw in the upper left our PPC curve. In our upper right, we'll do our business cycle. Then we'll do our ASAD. And then we'll do our Phillips curve. So if you're wondering how to divide it up, step one, hamburger style. Step two, open the hamburger, hot dog style. Oh, cameo. Cameo. That was a good one. That was a good one. It's okay. I don't know if there's one L or two L's in that. I hope so. This is on video. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yep. And the seventh doesn't really count. It's like bank T charts. Heck yeah, we are. Yeah. Okay, so our goal now is to show a full employment, a recessionary gap, and an inflationary gap on each graph. That way we have the ultimate cheat sheet right ready done for us. You guys excited about this? Yeah, if I'm at full employment on my PPC curve, where am I? On the curve, right? Full employment, I'm on the curve. If I am in a recession, where am I? Inside. I don't want to draw a smiley face for inflation. How about I draw a balloon? Yeah. On my business cycle graph, if I am at full employment, where am I at? On the trend line. Woo! I'm existing right over here. If I'm having a recession, or if I'm in a recessionary gap, where am I? In the trough. If I'm experiencing inflation, where am I? Approaching the peak, right? This time it's going to have to be a tiny little balloon. Yeah. This time I have a little kid holding it. Hi, I have a balloon. Recession, full employment, inflation. Recession, full employment, inflation. How about where do I have full employment on my ASAD model? Yep. At the long run aggregate supply at our full employment. So anywhere along this line at our full employment line, Y, full employment. How about where is my recessionary zone? To the left side. That means our inflationary gap would be on the right side. Boom, inflation. I'm a balloon. This time he's going to hold it with his left hand because it's fun that way. This time it's tied to his foot. And then if I'm at full employment and natural rate of unemployment in my Phillips curve, where am I at? Along my line. Therefore, if I'm in a recession, what side am I going to? To the right side for this one. Sad face. And then my inflationary zone would be to the left. So our inflationary zone will be to the left. Cool. That will do it for the day.